Hello everybody, welcome to Ludwig Lane Music. My name is Gary Castro. Thank you for joining me for another video. Today, we have something special for you. It's a little music theory, and it's something that I'm going to try to explain in a very intuitive way. Hopefully it'll be entertaining for you folks, and I hope you enjoy it. So let's cut to the chase and cue the comp. Now, this video will be more like a soliloquy regarding one of the more what the hell aspects of music. Okay, it'll be more like a rant.
Actually, it'll be more like an open letter, but hopefully through my self-flagellation, you, the listener, will gain some insight on this subject.
And what is the subject, you may ask? Well, since you asked, it's what the hell is a sixth chord? And we are also going to talk about the symbolism of the number 6 in classical music and in modern music as well. Oh, and before we start, I would like to have you, my viewers, have a little background knowledge of what I'm about to say.
And by that, I just mean brushing up on some music vocab, just 3 words, that's it. Yeah, I will mention these words from time to time, and God forbid, I don't want you to get lost.
And here are those words in under 20 seconds. First one, interval,
which is the distance in pitch between 2 tones.
Word number 2,
Dissonance, which are intervals that clash in sound when played together, aka, what the hell is that sound?
And the last word,
Consonants, which are intervals that sound great together, aka.
So let us commence my open letter to the sixth chord.
Dear sixth chord, what art thou? Is thou a minor chord? A major chord? Art thou a major chord disguised as minor? What is this identity crisis?
And I'm trying to keep this on an iambic pentameter, so I'd appreciate it if you didn't laugh. And I'd like to keep you guys up to speed. When I say sixth chord, it can mean one thing. It can mean 2 things. It can mean 3 or more things. At least 4 things? At least 3 things? Oh well.
I would first like to delve into the meaning of sixth chords in the classical music sense.
So, keep in mind, we are in the austere classical music world. So, say you are a classical musician, a harpsichordist, and you are reading music from a funky version of a lead sheet. They call this thorough bass or figured bass. And it looks like this. Totally comprehensible, right?
See that 6 right there? Some of you may need a magnifying glass for that.
And since you're such a well-trained harpsichordist, you know that every time you see a 6 under a note, the note that you're actually seeing is not the root, but the 3rd.
And you gotta make damn sure that that 3rd is the lowest note of the chord. And to make matters worse, some composers rely on you, the player, to improvise using nothing but this crazy numbering system.
It is your job to fill out the missing notes and the rest of the chord, because guess what? Figured bass just basically means the composer is just too damn lazy to write the music himself. And it's up to you, some rando dude 350 years later, to finish what they wrote. Just breathe, man. You could do it. Well, why the number 6? Well, the number 6 is just, you could say, some music shorthand that just explains the interval that you are supposed to play. And why I say shorthand is because the 6 is actually short for 6/4. And it's not the 6/4 that you use cruising down the street.
So when you are on the first inversion of a chord, you literally play a 6th interval and a 4th interval. And that's where 6/4 comes from.
That actually reminds me of a funny story. When I was in college, I was playing harpsichord for a performance, and I was reading from a figured bass chart. And the composer of this work was Claudio Monteverdi, who was a 17th century Italian composer, really early Baroque. So the music was pretty redundant, so I wanted to improvise using my own spicy style. And it's safe to say it didn't sound Baroque at all when I was playing it. My professor was pretty pissed off at me. Okay, the second meaning of the number 6 in the classical world pertains to what I said before with figured bass. So, most of you already know the Roman numeral system in classical music. Capitalized Roman numerals mean major chords, and lowercase Roman numerals meant minor chords. And if you see a 6 next to a Roman numeral, that just basically means to play that chord in its first inversion. And that's pretty straightforward. And I want to give a shout out to my boy, the Neapolitan 6. You know, people forgot about him, They played him extensively during the Baroque era.
All you were was a lowered 2nd degree minor chord in the first inversion.
The way he would lead you to a dominant chord? Man, that was beautiful, man. Yeah, I'm cool. Neapolitan 6. Rest in peace.
Oh, and here's a typical Neapolitan 6 cadence.
And the last 6 chords that I want to talk about pertaining to the classical era is the infamous Augmented 6th Chord. And I'm not going to go through all of this in detail. And if I talk about it more than I have to, I'm going to go crazy. So I'll keep it brief. The Augmented 6 chords are just demented chords that when you look at it at an analytical perspective, it'll drive you insane because it confuses the crap out of the music. They are ungodly abominations of chords that beg for the apocalypse. To be honest though, they sound pretty damn awesome. And here are the unholy, godforsaken trinity of Augmented 6 chords by name. They are as followed.
The unholy trinity of Augmented 6 Chords.
The Italian Augmented 6.
Ooh, that's very nice.
The French Augmented 6.
Ooh, scary.
Der Deutsche, the German Augmented 6. Alright, so how scary were those chords? Well, admittedly not that scary, right? Now, as a college kid, I was afraid of these chords because I didn't quite understand them as well as I do now. And plus, the way they were written just really freaked me out. Just look at that. Well, the only important thing to know about these chords is that they led you to the dominant chord. And usually that dominant chord resolves to the root, but not all the time. Let's see how the greatest of all time, the maestro himself, Beethoven, used an Augmented 6 chord. Alright. So I did not bring my 100-piece orchestra with me, so I'm going to play it slow on my keyboard here. And we are paying attention to the upcoming Italian Augmented 6 at the end of the phrase. And there you have it. That is probably one of the most famous examples of an Augmented 6 chord. And in this case, it's the Italian Augmented 6. See how it led to the dominant chord, the G major? That Augmented 6 chord gave the phrase a sense of finality. And in my opinion, the phrase ended with gusto and awesome force. So the French, Italian, and German Augmented 6 chords Even though they have the same function in being predominant chords, they all have their unique flavor. Think of them as a cherry, grape, and orange snow cone. They're different flavors, but they all quench your insatiable appetite in having something cold for the summer. So in short, augmented sixth chords are kind of like ear candy. And when used right, they really can sweeten up chord progressions. But the most important feature of the Italian, French, and German augmented sixth chord is that they had the sixth interval kicked up half a step. But hear what I said. You raise the sixth interval by half a step. Now when you notate it like that, it's definitely an augmented sixth. But when I look at the keyboard, I really don't see an augmented sixth. I see something else. Now I know what you're thinking.
But Gary, if you raise a major 6 interval, don't you get a minor 7?
Why, yes you do, little Timmy. Yes you do. So, if you were to play this,
What?
this,
B sharp? What the?
or this,
Oh no, what's that supposed to be?
yeah, if you were to play those intervals on a keyboard or a guitar, you'd swear to me that this was a minor 7th interval. And I would not blame you.
Ah, but look at the notation.
So, according to the notation, they're not minor 7ths, they're augmented 6ths. And that's pretty much enough to drive any musician crazy.
Oh my god, this video is getting me worked up. I gotta calm down.
I know I'm scratching the surface right now, but if you want me to go into more specifics into augmented sixth chords, let me know if you want me to do a video.
I could do one. Do I want to? Okay, let's move into modern music, shall we?
This is where we will answer the question, what is a sixth chord in modern music?
And just an FYI, I am just going to be talking about the major 6 chord, and most people don't even call it the major 6 chord, they just call it 6th chord. Yeah, when you're talking about a 6 chord in modern music, the major chord is already implied.
But in this video, I'll use 6, major 6, or major 6 chord all interchangeably. And after some consideration, I'm not going to go much into the minor 6th chord. It's used in an entirely different way than the major 6th chord. Minor 6th chords are way more dramatic than its major counterpart, and I think it deserves its own video.
So, let's get into the straight dope on the major 6th chord. What the hell was that? This very confused chord, the 6th chord, it disguises itself as a major and sometimes minor chord.
As if it could hold a candle to its major, minor, or even diminished brethren, right?
Oh, but 6th chord, we know who you are.
We know what you're up to. We know who you truly are.
You sick son of a... Nah, just play.
Let's construct a 6th chord, shall we? Let's say, I don't know, we're in the key of C. And for the sake of simplicity, we see this symbol, which is, you guessed it, a C6 chord. And you could also see this symbol, and it means the same thing, C6 all the way. The capital M just basically means major. Why am I telling you this when I could just show you?
Alright, I'm just going to go to the piano, and you guys are just going to catch up with me there.
A C major chord just has these notes, the root, C, the third, E, and the fifth, which is G. When you're playing a 6th chord, you are also adding the 6th interval. In this case, it is A. And look at that. Look at that major 2nd interval between G and A. And that dissonance, oh my God. And this A happens to be next to G. Oh, just look at that monstrosity. Look at that. It's like a tumor growing behind the 5th of the chord. Check this. Move the root up to the top so that the third is in the bottom for the first inversion. As long as I play the root note on my left hand, the chord's good, baby. Of course, you could flip the notes around in different orders and you could make them into inversions. You know what? You guys have been distracting me from my open letter to the sixth chord. I shall continue now. Oh, sixth chord, your auxiliary interval giveth the song an ambiguous feel, unlike the humdrum of a simple major chord. Okay, let me see if I could put that simply. Okay, so when you hear a sixth chord all by its lonesome, you'd most likely hear a minor seventh chord, which is one way of looking at it because in essence, that's what it is.
We know who you are, you C6 chord. You see, we know you disguise yourself as an A minor seventh chord. You can't fool me, you can't fool us. You have all the same notes. Well, we're on to you now, you phony chord, you.
So what do I mean that a sixth chord could be compared to a minor seventh chord? Well, for the sake of simplicity, let's take our trusty friend, the C6 chord. Let's lay out the notes and see what we got going on. See all those notes? Well, all those notes also go into the A minor seventh chord, just like an anagram. And what do C and A have in common? They're cousins, bro. So yeah, the relative of C major is A minor and vice versa. So I guess you could technically look at a major sixth chord and look at it as if it was its relative minor's seventh chord. So it's not like C and A are estranged relatives. Like a bad family picture, they're paired with each other all the time. They even have matching outfits. Cute. So that's it, right? We can just look at a sixth chord's relative minor and make it a minor seventh chord, right? Nah, not really. So I will try to explain the difference between a minor seventh chord and a sixth chord. Let's go ahead and dive into a bit of the theory behind the sixth chord. So when it comes to sixth chords and minor seventh chords and differentiating between the two, I'd like to say that the bass note and intervals are very, very important. So I'm about to bust out some peer-reviewed sources just to make my point. American professor, scientist, and composer David Cope added his own theories on the concept of interval strength. Remember that word, consonant, opposite of dissonance? Well, when simply put, an interval strength is based on the most consonant pitches of a fundamental. You know, that's pretty hard to understand. Let me paraphrase by giving you an example. Let's stick with the C6 chord. C will be on the bass, and since that C is on the bass, it will already have a leg up compared to the rest of the pitches of the chords. And that's because the bass note establishes rhythm and tonal prominence. And according to what David Cope said about interval strength, there is one interval that has the strongest consonants relative to our C bass note. And what's that interval? It's the perfect fifth. Just so you know, the perfect fifth is the interval that has the strongest consonants in Western music, other than the octave or the unison. So the C6 chord sounds closer to a C chord due to the C being on the bass, and that C chord is also strengthened due to the perfect fifth interval, which in this case it's G. But even when I say a C6 chord is closer to a C chord, your ear still can't put a finger on it because it still sounds ambiguous. You can't make heads or tails of it. And that's the beauty of a major sixth chord. And because of its inherent uncertainty, when a major sixth chord is used, it doesn't leave the listener satisfied. The listener would be begging for some kind of resolution. And for all you songwriters out there, the major sixth chord is perfect to use when the major chord is a little too bland and cookie cutter for you and you want to spice it up a bit. Or if you're looking for a certain chord progression that is, I would say, unfinal, go ahead and end that progression with a sixth chord. That sixth chord is a surefire earbender that would make your audience scream for more. I guess you could call the sixth chord the chord that keeps on giving. And to make a food analogy, I guess you could call the sixth chord analogous to the middle bun of a Big Mac. Yeah, the middle bun allows the patties and the cheese and all the fixings to be in place, and it also expands the burger. Yeah, the sixth chord is a lot like that middle bun, because when used correctly, that sixth chord could expand a musical phrase. Or like the middle bun, that sixth chord could be there to just taste good. Look good. Sound good. Yeah, it's a great way to add color to a chord progression, and a way better alternative than just using a plain major chord. Wow, I just got really hungry right now. So I'll go ahead and proceed in giving you 2 examples of what sixth chords could be used for. In the genres of blues and rock and roll, sixth chords are used a lot. So I will go ahead and play this jump blues rhythm on my left hand. Oh, and I'm also sticking with the key of C for the sake of simplicity. No sharps, no flats, easy. All right, this is from the song Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy. Try saying that 5 times fast. I will then add rhythmic C chords on my right hand. Sounds pretty good, huh? Well, keep in mind, they're just C chords. Now I'm going to change my right hand chord to a C6 chord. See if you can tell the difference. And that extra note that I added was A, and that's the 6th interval, which makes it a C6 chord. It adds a ton of color, right? So me playing a regular C major chord, and me playing the C6 chord, which is meant to be played like this, by the way. And that 6th chord awesomeness right there. And hopefully the difference is obvious. Now, surprise, surprise, I'm finally going to mention the Beatles on this channel. Now, several of the few things that made the Beatles amazing was their use of harmonies, their chords, cadences, things like that. And I don't want to beat a dead horse with that. We all know how great the Beatles were, and I will eventually make music bios of the Beatles and their songs. But now we're going to talk about sixth chords and the Beatles' use of sixth chords using this example. So the song we're using today is She Loves You from their 1964 album, Twist and Shout. And I chose this song because this was my first foray of what sixth chords are all about. Yeah, it brings back memories of 11-year-old me trying to play by ear and trying to see what these crazy chords are all about. But nonetheless, this song is a perfect example of how to effectively use a sixth chord. And every time I want to teach my students about sixth chords, this is my go-to song for sixth chords. So just so you guys know, since I'm on the piano, I am playing an arranged version of the song, and it's arranged for piano, obviously. It's using the approximate voicings of John and George's guitars, along with John and Paul's singing on my right hand. And in my left hand, I'm playing Paul's approximate bass line. Oh, viewer, you just can't imagine the power I feel playing all of those parts with just my two hands. No, I'm just playing. And this is an official arrangement of She Loves You because it was published by Northern Songs. Many of you Beatles aficionados know that Northern Songs was the publishing company owned by Lennon and McCartney, Brian Epstein, and Dick James. And that just means that the voicings are as close to the original recording as possible. So let's play She Loves You by the Beatles. And I will play it a little slower because the G6 chord will sneak up on us. Oh, and we are in the key of G major. Oakley dokley. So for this first go around, I'm going to attempt to sing while I play the chords and explain what's going on. And for my second go around, I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to go for it. But I might start in the middle of the phrase so that way you could get ready for the sixth chord. All right, here we go. Okay, so the first chord is your E minor, which is the relative minor to G major. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. Then you got your A7 chord, which is a borrowed chord. Very awesome, very well-placed chord, I might add. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. Then you got your C major chord. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. Then you got your magic chord, your G6 chord. Yeah. But wait a minute, I just sang a D. Let's make it a true G6 chord by singing an E. Watch towards the end. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, 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 yeah. You see, there it is. There's that G6 chord. You see, in this phrase, your ears really do want to hear a proper diatonic descent to any of the G's chord tones, the G, B, or D. And in this case, it'll be that D. You want to hear, yeah, 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 yeah. But you do get that in a sense. John Lennon actually sings that D. Remember, you're in the G chord, John Lennon sings that D. And Paul McCartney sings the G, which is, I think it's an octave higher. And you have clever George Harrison singing the sixth interval, which is the E, which is the one I sang second time around. And it was actually George Harrison's idea to sing that E and to make it a G6 chord. Now, George Harrison was my favorite Beatle for many reasons, and this is just one of those reasons. So once again, I will sing and play the final two chords of this phrase, the C major going into the G6. All right, really bend your ear here and see if you could identify all four notes of the G6 chord, G, B, D, and E. She loves you, yeah, 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 yeah. All right, in that particular instance, like before, I sang the E and everything else was a G chord. And that's the magic of a sixth chord. It resolves it in a very unconventional, unorthodox way. And in this case, it segues to the verse perfectly. And just so you know, the G6 is also used in the verse, and I'm not going to cover that one because this video will be way too long. And as well, the G6 chord that I played is the most prominent because the song ends with that chord. And I'm going to go into that in a bit more detail later, but first a little recap on why the Beatles used that G6 chord in the first place. And it doesn't warrant a lot of explaining. They simply used it as an unconventional way to segue into the verse. And I reckon that the Beatles wanted to have a little fun in their progressions and close the phrase in a non-kosher way. It's as if the listener expects a proper resolution for the chorus, and the Beatles are like, bollocks, I ain't giving you one. Oh, and funny story about this song. So the Beatles would run their songs by their producer, George Martin, and he was 100% a music prodigy. He was a guru, he loved Bach, he loved authentic cadences, he loved doing things the classically trained way. He was a brilliant music purist and frankly a snob. So when he first heard the ending to She Loves You, he was like, why in the world are you ending this song in a sixth chord? And the band was all like, well, it sounds good. And then George Martin replied with a little stab. Well, I will never ever end a song with a sixth chord. It's just so corny. Well, the Beatles must have scoffed and went with their gut. And it seems like it paid off. Because I'm talking about that 60 years later on a YouTube video. So let me complete my ode to the sixth chord. Oh, sixth chord, I guess you're not so bad. I finally understand that you're there for a reason. You transcend major, you transcend minor and diminished chords. Yet, you're less complicated than augmented chords. And trust me, we'll get to that in another video. Hold up. Now, while I was editing, I found something interesting in playback. Check this out. When I was writing in my journal, I saw this. So I'll just leave this here. I'm not going to say anything else about it. Back to our regularly scheduled programming. As performers and listeners of music, I think we are used to and rely on simple triads. Cadences are nice and predictable when they are performed in simple major and minor chords. But what made us deserve nice and predictable? Why can't we have chords that kick our ass? Why can't there be music that makes our ears go, ah, what the hell, man? Well, maybe not that intense. Maybe more like the feeling when you're expecting sweet rather than spicy, or vice versa. Oh yeah, that's good. So that's what the sixth chord is for. It's just the right amount of safe and spicy. Kind of like Mongolian beef. Hey, can't we please go to lunch right now? So I hope you folks have a better understanding of what sixth chords are and the possibilities that they could bring to the table. I had a blast researching this video. Please let me know what you thought of this video. Please give me a thumbs up. A nice comment or two would be nice. If there's anything I'd like my listeners to do, it's definitely subscribe. And I thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.